Hi, welcome back to the Be the Cake podcast with me, your host, Liz Campbell. And just before I get started, I just want to say that there will be background noise in this because I'm recording it with the window open because it's been fairly relentlessly boiling recently, and I'm upstairs recording this in a room that has big windows and there's a lot of light streaming through. I love the light, but it makes it very warm. So I've got the window open. You can hear the buzz of the coffee shop across the road and you can hear the traffic going past. So that's no accident, okay? So today I wanted to talk about being the black sheep of your family is a blessing, not a curse, okay? Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if you're listening to this now, probably have at some point identified yourself as being different to the rest of your family in some way, shape or form, not fitting in as such. And maybe at some point you convinced yourself that this was a bad thing, a terrible thing. Maybe when you were younger, you felt like you had to change yourself in order to fit other people's expectations. You probably received quite a lot of conditioning as a result. And I'm here to say to you that you basically not fitting in and you having this deep sense of being different is actually your signal that you're here as a code breaker for your family, who probably have some really heavy conditioning going on that you've inherited at a cellular level, and you are here to change. Okay, and that's not a bad thing. What it inherently means is that you are here as a pioneer. You are here as a way shower. You are here as a change maker. You are here to do things differently. And whilst it might seem like a little bit of a painful journey in places because you may have grown up feeling misunderstood, there may be a history of trauma, maybe even abuse, where you feel like the gaps between you and your parents, maybe even you and your siblings, were huge and insurmountable, and that you were bullied or treated badly as a result. All of that pain that you've experienced, okay, is fuel to be alchemized to essentially kind of create, for want of a better way of putting it, this whole thing of the phoenix rising from the ashes, which is what you are here to be. You are here to be that person where you look down the family line and you see everyone's been doing kind of the same things. And maybe you had one parent who was a little bit of a rebel, but then again, they kind of weren't. And they ended up trying to fit into other people's systems in some way, shape or form in ways that really don't resonate with you. But, I know this is certainly true for me with my life, that I've kind of been the product of two parents who on some level were rebels and on some level were also trying to conform, looking to fit in, looking to tick other people's boxes on some level. Okay, so with my mum, she ended up fitting in with spiritual, quote unquote, and you can get the sarcasm as I say that, organisations. And I will always say that these big religious, quasi-religious spiritual organisations that have a doctrine that they teach, and they're very cult-like in the way that they behave and the way that they condition people, are, they prey on people who are born into families where they don't feel like they fit in, where they feel different. You could say sort of they prey on the neurodivergent, they prey on those who are creative and a bit out there, but also feeling lonely and confused. And they provide them with a structure that feels very safe and very secure, and very much like they're joining a nice little club where they can fit in. Okay, and then they slowly take away your freedoms through what they're teaching, through their doctrine, through their indoctrination. You see this happen with every single one. I witnessed it with my mum. She's still caught up in the throes of all this stuff today. You see it with the official religious organisations. It's all just more of the same thing, So I had a mother who was into that, and a father who, bless him, he's a rebel in his own way, but his mother was very overbearing and outspoken. My grandma was, she ruled the whole family with a rod of iron to a certain extent, and she died when I was 15, or just before I was 15 actually. But essentially she, that the conditioning that she gave everyone, I've still been removing bits of that recently that's been popping up and understanding kind of the depths of it, and actually how it was such a kind of like being branded as being like, you will conform to this and these are my beliefs and you will fit in with them and you will adhere. And there's a lot of that. You might recognize what I'm saying here as being something that you've experienced in your own family. And what I'm not doing here is saying that you should decide that you hate your family, or that that you're against them for the way that they've been in any way, shape or form. At the end of the day, everyone's just doing the best that they can, right? And I do think it's important to have a lot of compassion for the fact that people don't see beyond the walls that they built for themselves and the prisons they put themselves in. But you, as the black sheep, as the code breaker, as the way shower, as the innovator, as the pioneer, as the kind of the rebel of the family, you are here not just to change stuff for you, but you are here to change the DNA. You are here to inherently correct all the distortions that have happened in the DNA, in the genetics, in the RNA over the course of multiple generations. Okay. And I'm going to probably misquote this really heavily because I haven't actually read the book. It's something that's in my possession, and for some reason after I bought it, because everyone told me I should buy it, I just never felt the call to actually read it. And I have a tendency to just listen to my intuition with this stuff, and people telling me you should read it, it's an amazing book, and yada da da da. And I picked it up at one point and I just couldn't get into it. And I think on some level, it was because I didn't want yet more indoctrination posing as something. But as far as I'm aware, it makes some very, very valid points. I had my friend Sean pointed out to me a while ago. Okay, they're talking about this book, which is called Women Who Run With Wolves by Clarissa Pinkerson Estes, I do believe. I might have misquoted the author's name, and apologies if I have. And she said to me, she turned around to me and said, Liz, you and I are misplaced zygotes. And I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she said, have you not read Women Who Run With the Wolves? And I was just like, well, I own it. It's just I haven't been able to get into reading it. And she basically said to me, there's a story in the book called Misplaced Zygotes where it talks about how some souls basically end up being born into the wrong families, or not their first choice of family, and that there's some element of them coming in where what their soul wants isn't actually a match for the family that they're being born into, and so they are persecuted and they feel like the odd one out and the black sheep as a result. But the blessing within this rather kind of gnarly situation, if you want to call it that, you could look at it that way, you could look at it from so many different levels. It can feel really gnarly when you're going through this whole thing of going, well, I don't fit in and I don't conform and I don't fucking want to either, basically. But then realising when you go into the energetics of stuff, how much there is that's holding you back from really being a full embodiment of your soul desires because of all of the levels and layers of programming and so on and so forth that are going on within your physical body and I was talking about this in the last podcast, basically the layers and levels of programming and all of that stuff, basically, that is essentially preventing you from really easily and effortlessly manifesting the things that you want. And in actual fact, sort of, you end up being faced with a choice where you either end up being barreled into your masculine full tilt, so therefore kind of continuing the patriarchal bullshit of everything is action, etc., etc., and you have to work hard to earn whatever, all of that stuff, which I've always had this inherent fucking understanding is absolute bollocks. Okay, so you end up being forced to make the choice between doing that and being wedged into the patriarchal toxic masculine overdrive in order to create the results that you want, or you go the other way and you dive deep into your innate feminine wisdom and knowing, and you start to understand that it's time to use the magic to create the transformation at the cellular level, and so on and so forth, and in the process free yourself from, and actually in the process of doing that, what you're doing is you're freeing the whole family from all of the conditioning that came before. So you end up basically where there's been this extreme in the past, you end up kind of like, it's like that physics adage of each and every action has an equal and opposite reaction, like the pendulum swing in the other direction. So you either end up having to go into almost like hyper feminine magical awareness with assistance from others, which is inevitable along the way. You'll have that point in life, and I feel like I've done both. At one point I was very much the hyper masculine, get shit done, do all the things, action. That was how I was. I was always the hardest worker. I was the person when I worked in the wine trade who, when I first started working there, I spent 6 months working from 8 a.m. till almost 7 p.m, basically, in order to build my lists and yada, 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 all of that stuff. And everyone gave me the stamp of approval. Oh, you're so hardworking. You've worked so hard at this. Oh, that's why you're doing so well, and so on and so forth. But I always understood underneath all of this that there was an easier way. And I was actually getting exhausted with this masculine way of doing things. And at the point where I started tapping into the fact that I'm here to actually be the alchemical mentor, and started with the very first stages of that, doing my hypnotherapy diploma, getting my Reiki certifications, which I don't use anymore, basically, because I've developed and brought through my own modalities and ways of working with energy that I find more powerful and more effective, and more importantly, much more resonant with me and the way that I am, because they don't have a doctrine as such attached to them. They have ethics in terms of the way that I work, but they don't have a doctrine that's coming from someone else and fed to me by someone else attached to them. And I think that's one of the important things for me, has always been that whole thing of being sort of self-led. But I will say right here and right now that I had to go through these trainings with other people to kind of get started, to start bringing through my own stuff. And now the way that I teach people, it's very much leading them into their own way of doing things and helping them to understand their own power, rather than imposing a set way of doing things. These are my processes, you must learn them type of stuff on others. Okay, so, there's a differential there. But essentially, I took the pendulum swing from one way of doing things to the other way of doing things. And nowadays I'm sort of finding my way of balancing the two, not from the point of view of going, I have to do the masculine stuff to make things happen, but the masculine expressions for me are about me doing my art and presenting it to the world and expressing it. And it's about healthy self-expression rather than I must do this thing to get this thing, which is how most people operate. Okay. But, looking at all of that, looking at this whole concept of, the black sheep being in actual fact the way shower, I know that as I do this, my son, whether he understands it or not now, just by dint of the fact that I haven't kind of ticked the boxes when it came to fitting in with the way that people say you should do things when I was bringing him up, in the way that I talk to him now, in the way I talk to my stepkids, actually, talking to them and actually making it very, very clear to them that they can be, do and have whatever that they want, that there is no set way to get from point A to point B. It gets to be their choice. They get to design the journey. They get to enjoy the journey. And that if anyone's telling them otherwise, they're speaking out of their arse. Okay, so I kind of feel like, my message when it comes to the kids is you can be whatever you choose to be. It's not down to an examination board or what teachers say or what anyone at school says or what society says or anything else. What it's down to is your own inner knowing and your own willingness to listen to that internal pull and take the steps that you are being guided to take from the inside. The issue that we have, though, obviously in society, is that people are so indoctrinated that they, and this is a sweeping generalisation, I know, but so many people still are so indoctrinated that in order to get from this point to this point, you have to do X, Y, Z. Basically, and that's just the way things are, and and there are a lot of people who've basically been trained to be fearful of challenging those perceptions and coming up with different ways of doing things. And I think for those of us who are the black sheep and the rebels within our families, we're the ones who are not only here to basically do things differently ourselves, but we're here to actually give the message to the kids around us that they can do things differently too. And that is a blessing. It's not a curse. It might feel like a curse when you're going through the whole conflict with your family and all of that kind of stuff. And, I was looking at this the other day. Sarah Al-Madani, who was doing some kind of talk somewhere, and I caught a clip of it where she was talking about how she grew up as a black sheep of her family, and there was an awful lot of tradition and stifling rules that she really didn't resonate with growing up, and she had to really challenge all of them, and it was very difficult. But she's now in a position where she is, speaking on stages, talking about this stuff. She's got her own tech company where she's championing women and actually bringing spirituality into the mix. She's doing things differently. She has a calling coming from inside of her that she is expressing, and she is effectively living proof of what I'm talking about here, that you do not have to tick the boxes that people have given you that they're saying on this list are the things that you need to do in order to achieve blah blah blah, whatever the fuck it is. Okay, that you can literally show people that there are completely different ways of doing things however you want. If you want to go into your hyper-masculine to do it, that's fine. If you want to go into your hyper-feminine to do it, that's fine. If you want to do it through balance, that's fine. But the key point of all of this is to understand that the way that you're choosing to do it is not, then a formula that you teach to other people as being the way. Okay, because that's where we've gone wrong as a society, when we spend our whole time kind of putting these processes that we develop on a pedestal and making them more important than people's inner voice. Being taught to ignore our intuitions in favor of advice and opinions from other people. In actual fact, any belief system that anyone has is purely opinion based on their own personal experience, which if you understand anything about the quantum and anything about manifestation, ultimately you are always, as the observer, affecting the results of what you're doing, and your belief systems are inherently tied up in that. So what works for you is not necessarily going to work for someone else. What's worked for someone else is not necessarily going to work for you. And if you're not addressing the energetics and you're just basically following other people's formulas, you're going to have a really hard time creating anything that you feel really proud of in life, because of the fact that you are not allowing your own soul to speak. Okay. And, I think if we look at this really frankly, you understand ultimately that your soul always has the answers. And the best people to mentor you or to guide you are the ones who actually guide you back inwards and show you how to do that, show you how to go inwards and give you tools to help you clear up the stuff that's in the way of that, which is essentially my philosophy for how I work with people. I help them to identify the stuff that's in the way. I help them to understand how to shift it, and I help them to understand how to connect more deeply with themselves so they can bring through more of who they authentically are, rather than packaging up a neat little formula of like, these are physical action steps you take, and then this will be the nice little neatly packaged, tied up with a bow result that you get. Much as I know that some people would love that kind of thing where they get to like tick this box, and this box, and then they get the prize at the end, because they want that level of ease and they don't want to think for themselves. But I know when I'm speaking this, I am speaking now to people who understand that they're not here to follow in other people's footsteps. You're here to think for yourself. You're here to bring through your full potential, and your full potential can never be defined by what someone else has done before you. And I think that's the most important message of the lot. Your full potential is yours, and yours alone to discover and to express and to basically live in the essence of. Okay? And no one else can dictate that to you. Even when you get a reading from someone, when it comes to psychic readings and stuff, they can, like any psychic worth their salt, can literally tap into what's going on with you and what path you're on now and what will happen if you continue on this path. But that's not like the only option available to you. And that's something that needs to be understood. You can change anything at any moment. I will say this forever. Your destiny is in your hands. It's not in someone else's hands. Your destiny is your own choice. And if you're going to work with people who show you how to tap into what it is that you desire most, and actually how to bring that to fruition in the ways that resonate the most with you. Okay, the ones that are soul aligned. That's it, And it is about coming back to the fact that, loving yourself includes listening to yourself, includes listening to your soul guidance, and also includes surrounding yourself with people who support you being you, regardless of what that fucking means, rather than making their relationship with you conditional upon you basically enslaving yourself to them. Okay. So yeah, that's, if you want to boil it down, there's an awful lot of people out there trying to enslave people to their ways of doing things, and trying to kind of do that whole external thing of people need to behave in XYZ manner in order to make me happy, and I'm going to try and manipulate them to do that, and I'm going to throw a fucking hissy fit if that doesn't happen. Basically, there's an awful lot of that. Ultimately, don't be one of those people. Don't be one of those people, and don't entertain those people either, because it's bullshit. Okay. And you can love them, but you can also say, no, sorry, not gonna play that game. I'm not here to play games with people who are only interested in subjugating me to their will. Okay, there's much different with you. There's so much better ways of creating than trying to do that. Anyhow, if you want to find out more about working with me, you can do so by checking out the Linktree, which is somewhere around this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. If it's on YouTube, it'll be in the drop-down box. If it's on Spotify, it'll be somewhere in the info. Same with Apple Podcasts, so on and so forth. Sending you so much love. Till next time. Mwah.